Hi, everyone. My name is Ken Stoltzfus. I'm going to be teaching the rest of the Psych 370 Introduction to Counseling class this year. I was really hoping to do this in person to kind of just introduce myself, get to know you, and to go over the course syllabus and just kind of answer any questions you might have. Because I know it's been a little bit crazy with trying to change instructors and deal with COVID and now having a snow day. So I'm sorry that we have to do this by video. Again, I'm planning to meet in person next week. And I just thought I didn't want to waste another week, so I thought I'd go ahead and get the class started. What I want to do with this video is just introduce myself briefly to you so you know who's teaching the class, and then also wanted to go over the syllabus with you. And I will, of course, post the syllabus as a document on Moodle, but I thought it'd be good just for you to hear me kind of talking through what I'm thinking with the syllabus. So anyway, just a little bit about me. I'm the academic dean at Friends, which means I kind of work with the division chairs. I oversee the day-to-day academic operations of the university. And to be honest with you, I haven't taught at Friends yet. I've been so busy just with other things at Friends that I have not taught a class here at Friends yet, although I do some volunteer teaching with a university overseas that I used to work at when I was an overseas missionary. So I've been still involved in teaching, but haven't done it at Friends yet. I've really been wanting to teach a class. I'm planning to teach a class this spring. So this gets me started a little bit earlier. Excited to be back in the classroom. I really enjoy teaching. So looking forward to being a part of your class for the rest of the semester, at least for the next few weeks. Just a little bit about me. I mentioned in the email I sent last week, my background's in social work. I got into social work because I thought I wanted to be a high school teacher. And when it was time to do my student teaching, I got placed at a school in a district that was in an urban poor area. And so I was in a school that had gangs and a lot of drugs going on. And there had been some violence right before I got there. Someone had been stabbed in the hallway. And so it was a place that honestly I was scared to go to. You know, as a 21-year-old college student, I was really worried about walking into that. And what I found was it really wasn't that scary. I really came to love the students there. And I'll never forget, I gave a student detention one time for acting up, you know, kind of minor acting up in class. And we ended up sitting and talking the whole time in detention. And at the end of the detention, he said, "Hey, maybe we could do this again sometime. This was kind of fun." And I remember thinking, well, that wasn't really the point of the detention. But I think for me, it was one of those, you know, kind of moments where I thought, hey, I might be good at this, sitting and talking with people who are just going through some things. So after college, I ended up working in a youth ministry for a few years where I was working with a Christian ministry in an area of urban poverty. And I lived in that area as well. I lived right across the street from a place where a lot of drug dealers congregated. And there was someone who was shot on my street corner, and really just kind of got a picture into life that I didn't know very much about. And what I came to realize doing that sort of work was I was really interested in trying to make a difference in those sorts of problems in drugs and violence and in young people's lives. And so I went back to school, got a master's degree in social work, and I really focused on clinical social work. A lot of people don't realize this, but people with a master's in social work can, if they specialize in sort of clinical or counseling kind of work, they can do a lot of the same things that a counselor or a psychologist can do. So I spent a number of years after getting my master's degree doing counseling for people with substance abuse issues. For a while, that was teenage boys who had delinquency issues as well as substance abuse issues. So they had been to court, they had broken the law, they'd gotten put into a juvenile delinquency placement. And I worked in that facility where they were locked up and did counseling with them. And then after that, I worked at a Christian ministry that did outpatient counseling. So people who didn't live there, they came in to meet with us for counseling once or twice a week, or sometimes more if they were in real need of extra assistance. So I did that. I also ran a mental health program for at-risk youth for a year or so, where we sent counselors out into homes and schools and community organizations. So I had a background kind of in social work and mental health and substance abuse treatment. And then starting in 2003, I started teaching. So I spent 9 years teaching social work at the undergrad level at Malone University. If you've never heard of Malone, it's a school a lot like Friends. It's even a Quaker school. It's in Canton, Ohio. So I spent 9 years there. As part of my time there, I got the chance to teach and do research through a Fulbright program. I was a Fulbright scholar and got to go to Russia for a semester and just kind of fell in love with that part of the world, with the former Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, and got a chance to go back there for a few years to a country called Lithuania. a little country just north of Poland. And I taught psychology there. So I mentioned in the email, I've had a background teaching social work and psychology. So I taught psychology at a small university, LCC International University, small Christian university in Lithuania, that was run by Americans, and the classes were in English, but the students were from Lithuania and Russia, Ukraine, Moldova, sort of all over the former Soviet Union, the Eastern European part of the world. When we left that, we left a little earlier than we expected. My kids were having some trouble learning Lithuanian, and they were going to Lithuanian schools and were sort of struggling. So we came back. We spent 3.5 years in Alabama, where I worked for Stanford University. I was hired to start their social work department and to start a master's degree in social work program there. So we did that, and that was accredited in summer of 2017. And that same summer, after we got news about accreditation, is when Friends hired me to come to Friends as the academic dean. So I've been here at Friends ever since 2017. And yeah, that's kind of a little bit about me. Anyway, that may be way more than you wanted to know, but I think it's always good to just sort of know who's teaching these classes and what kind of background they have. Let me move from that information about me. I wanted to go ahead and share my screen and show you what I'm thinking about the syllabus for this course. This is a little bit different than what Professor Allen was going to do, but I've tried to backload most of the graded work, so I don't think it'll be a problem, but if there's any concerns about this, we can certainly talk more about that. So here's the course syllabus. My office is in Davis 311. That's up on the 3rd floor of Davis. I'd be glad to meet with you if you need assistance with anything or you just want to talk. I'm glad to meet in person. My office is big enough. If we sit at opposite ends of my table and we have our masks on, we can do the 6 feet social distancing. Or I'm glad to set up a time to talk to you by Zoom. I know we've got some students who are out of the area coming in by Zoom. So I'm really fine either way. Because I'm not primarily teaching, I don't have set office hours, but I can always, if you let me know, I can always find time to meet with you. Even if we need to do it later in the day or early evening, I can find a time to check in with you. So you can see my contact information there. Of course, the course description, I think you already know. Really, we're just trying to familiarize you with basic concepts and theories about counseling. And we do have some laboratory experiences with these. Because of COVID and social distancing and the fact that we're getting started late, we're going to make those pretty informal, but I'll talk to you in a minute what those will look like. The objectives you can see basically just want you to kind of get some background and history of the field of counseling. So we're going to go over some of the major theorists. You've probably heard about them in other classes, but we'll drill in a little bit more to what their contributions are to counseling and therapy. We're going to talk some about the theories that have been developed that guide our work as counselors. And I'm going to try to help you to start thinking about which theory might work best for you and sort of what you think which approach you think would work well for you. And we're going to try to develop some basic skills in counseling. Certainly, this is something that if you want to do counseling full-time, you need at least a master's, maybe a doctoral degree to do it. But we'll get started with kind of some basic skills in this course. You can see the department outcomes there. This is sort of how this course relates to the overall human services and psychology program. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that right now, but you're welcome to take a look at that when you look at the syllabus. The assignments for the course, I have 2 papers that are due, and these aren't huge long papers. They're about 5 to 7 pages each. The first one, and they kind of build on each other. So the first one just asks you to choose a population or a DSM-5 diagnosis that interests you. And it really can be a population or a diagnosis. Population could be children who have dealt with abuse and neglect. It could be homeless mothers, or the DSM diagnosis could be people with major depression or people with bipolar disorder, or it could be both. It could be, homeless mothers with substance abuse issues. That's both a diagnosis, the alcohol dependence or substance dependence diagnosis, as well as the population. You can really play around with that. I'd like you to pick something that you're interested in, and maybe a field. If you're thinking about going into counseling or clinical psychology, maybe even a field that you'd like to work in. So then give a background or some overview of that population or the issue or the diagnosis you've chosen. And as with all things in this class, you'll need to use APA style to cite 5 sources. So don't just give me your opinion about this issue or this population, but tell me, what the research says about them. And then the main part of this paper is I'm going to ask you to write a case study that kind of exemplifies possible counseling related concerns that are linked to that population or that diagnosis that you've chosen. So this can either be completely fictional, meaning you can just make it up, or it can be based on a real person. But if you do that, change their name, change their identifying information, make it somebody that if I ever meet them, somewhere, I'm not going to recognize them, because we don't want to violate anybody's confidentiality here. So in writing the case study, and I'm glad to help with this if you need more details, but the basic overview of it is you should describe the person's background, why they'd want counseling, and the symptoms that they're experiencing. And then at the end of that case study, write a couple paragraphs that link the case study back to the research literature. So if you say, oh, I want to, my population is veterans of wars who have experienced PTSD, link it back to the research that says, PTSD is a common problem in war veterans. Here are some of the symptoms that are likely. Here are the risks, at high risk for alcohol use, high risk for suicide, high risk for domestic violence. Just tell me a little bit why you included the information you did in the paper. Hopefully that makes sense. And again, we can talk more about this in class. I just wanted to give you an overview of what I'm asking you to do. And then the second paper, which is due at the end of the semester, and this will sort of be the final exam for the semester, analyze the case study they wrote in the first paper in light of the 4 categories of counseling theories we've talked about in class. So tell me, how would a psychodynamic therapist look at this problem? How would an existential humanistic therapist look at this? Cognitive behavioral, postmodern, just kind of pull each of those theory bases and explain what they might see differently or how they might act differently with the person you've written about in your case study. For that part, you can cite class lectures and readings. So, if I say something about psychodynamic and you want to quote that or cite that, that's fine. Just, say personal communication, case Daltus, November 2020, and that's fine. You don't need to pull out any, for that part, you don't need to pull out any or pull in any outside information. You don't have to do extra research. You can really just use course materials for that, because we're going to be talking a lot about that. Then I want you to think about what theory you would use if you were the counselor who's working with the client in your case study. So cite some research that supports your use of this theory. This is where you're going to need to go outside of the class materials. I'm probably not going to have much in class that says, hey, here's a theory that works really well for homeless mothers with addiction problems. You're going to have to go out and kind of look for some of that information. And you may not find the exact thing. You may find a theory that works well for people with addiction problems. And then you have to kind of say, well, based on that, I think it's the theory I'd use with homeless mothers with addiction problems, even though it doesn't exactly say homeless mothers. But you want to have some support for the theory that you're using. And again, that's the part you're going to need to kind of pull from outside the class materials. So hopefully that makes sense. Again, I'm glad to talk more about that if that'd be helpful. Just a note here, please write all your papers in APA style. Please don't use a lot of quotes. This is, in college, what we want is for you to take information, synthesize it, or kind of pull information from different sources together, analyze it, put it back out there in your own words. So you need to cite that, but what we don't want is a paper that's just all quotations. If your paper is all quotations, I'm not going to be able to give you a great grade on it, because it really isn't showing that you can take that information and kind of put it into a new form and understand it and tie information from different sources together to understand your particular issue. So just make sure you're kind of showing me that. Again, as far as the sources you cite, I think you all know this, but please make sure you're using either books by experts in a field or what we call peer-reviewed journals. Those would be journals that are academic journals where there's a panel of experts that say, yes, this is an acceptable journal article. Typically, we don't use Wikipedia, ask.com, answers.com, Time Magazine, those kinds of things. There might occasionally be a time where you want to say, Time Magazine says there's a huge mental health epidemic and lots of people with depression in 2020, and that's fine. But as far as getting into the nitty-gritty details, you really want that to come from more of the experts in the field. The other thing in the last paragraph is, if you can, try to have your sources be within about the last 15 years. If you're giving background information on a theory, as I am throughout the class, you'll notice a lot of my sources are a little older, because a lot of the theories that we're going to be talking about were developed a while ago. And so a little bit of background information is fine. But when you're looking on research or looking at research on effectiveness, you want that to be a little bit more recent. Here you can see I'm going to grade the class. You'll have 4 quizzes. They're 50 points each. I don't want to spend a lot of time in class giving quizzes and tests, so I'm just going to put those on Moodle. They'll be open book, open notes. but you're going to have a limited time to do them. So you're going to need to pay attention in class, take notes, read the readings, because you're not going to have forever to kind of flip through your notes and readings. You're going to have to know the information pretty well when you get into the quiz, because you're going to have a limited amount of time. And what I'm trying to make sure there is just that you're keeping up, because what I don't want is you just kind of have time to hunt and peck and pull the answers out. I really want you to kind of go into the quizzes knowing the information. We've already talked about the 2 papers. There'll be 100 points each. And then class participation. We're going to be having a lot of discussions. Hopefully we'll be in person at least until Thanksgiving, but we never know right now with COVID. So if the class gets moved online at any point, we'll have online discussions instead of face-to-face. But regardless, I'm just expecting you to be there, to be awake, to participate, to be on time, and to contribute something. Also, we're going to have some times where we practice counseling skills, and I'm just expecting you to do your best on that. You don't have to be an expert counselor at this point. I'd be shocked if you were, but just, again, give it your best shot, try your hardest, and you'll do fine with the participation. You can see my grading scale. I think that's pretty standard, the A, B, C, D, F. As I said a minute ago, class participation, this is your attendance, participation in class discussions, role plays, etc. Preparation for class. If I call on you, make sure you've done the reading, you at least have some sense of what's going on. And then, the final part is just in terms of being awake, being on time. If I see you on your phone the whole night, I'm probably not going to give you much for attendance that night because you weren't really completely with us. So just asking that when we're in class, that's the main focus. The textbook and the readings, I think you all have the textbook. I thought I had it in here. Before I post this online, I'll add the textbook in, but it is it's the short book on psychotherapy that Bill was going to use. It's the same book, and I'll have the name of that in here. COVID-related information. If you're sick or you think you have COVID, please don't come to class until you've had 3 days with no fever or 10 days since the symptoms first appeared. If you test positive for COVID, but you don't have symptoms, you need to stay home at least 10 days until the positive test, until 10 days after the positive test. And if you ever need to quarantine or anything, you need to join on Zoom. We've already got a Zoom section associated with this class, but just let me know so I know kind of who's going to be in which part of the class that night. Here's our plan for what we're going to do over the course of the next 5 weeks, 6 weeks. Today, I'm recording this on October 26th. We're going to kind of just focus on getting the class off to a good start and kind of giving some background information. So because it's a snow day, I'm going to put all the lectures online this week, and I'm going to have an online discussion, and that'll all count towards the class participation grade. So I'll go in, look, make sure you've watched the lectures, and I'll make sure you've done the discussion. I'll try to jump in and chime in on the discussion as well. And then that'll be part of your class participation. Also, the information from the lectures will be on the first quiz, which will be next week, not this week. I didn't want to hit you with a quiz this first week, just since it's been so crazy with changing instructors and the snow day and everything. So anyway, what you want to do after you've watched this is go into Moodle and watch each of these videos. This is the course introduction. You're already watching that. The counseling treatment process, and then the videos about assessment, treatment planning, and then intervention, evaluation, and termination. Here's a note about these videos. In the interest of time, I'm using videos that I used as a volunteer instructor at the school in Lithuania where I used to teach full-time. I still teach there as a volunteer online every year in the fall. And so rather than take the time to take a couple of days to re-record all those videos, because we had a last-minute snow day and because we're making the instructor change, I'm just going to put those videos up. The content is all accurate, and it's content I was going to go over for this course. You'll just notice at the beginning of the video, I say this is the assessment video for LCC International University for the Psychology 412 class. Just ignore that and just focus on the content. Once or twice in the videos, I might say something about the difference between the European system and the American system. And you can just ignore that as well, because obviously we're all at this point living in the US and working in the US. Again, that's just some information because I'm working quickly and don't want to redo those videos because I don't want to wait any longer to get them out to you. So that's this week. If you'll watch those videos and do the online discussion, that'll be class for this week. And then you can see what we're going to do in future weeks. Next week, we'll be talking about psychodynamic theories. Each night, I'm going to have a skill focus. So we'll break up into groups, and we can do this on Zoom. We can do this face-to-face, depending on who's where. So next week, we're just going to focus on active listening. We're going to spend a little bit of time with either 2 people or 3 people, depending on how the numbers break out, just taking turns kind of playing the counseling role and the client role and focusing on the skill of active listening. We'll work on a different skill each week. So basically next week by Monday, you want to have read textbook chapters 1, 2, and 3 by Monday, November the 2nd. And then you want to do quiz 1 by the end of that week. So by Sunday, November the 8th, by 11 p.m., go to the quiz on Moodle, take that quiz. That'll cover the information from the first 2 weeks, from this week and from next week. And then you can just kind of see each week we go through a different topic and we've got a different set of readings. So the following week we'll be into existential humanistic theories. We'll focus on skills development and open-ended questions and eliciting emotion from clients. And you can just see then what we'll do for the rest of the semester. You can also see your papers aren't due until November 16th and December 6th. So that gives you some time. I wanted to just push those back a little bit so you've got time to get up to speed, because I know the first few weeks have been a little hectic. Also, I wanted to point out, I don't have any quizzes or assignments due the week of Thanksgiving. So we'll meet that Monday night. Class is still in session, but then you don't really have anything else due except for reading that's due that next Monday after Thanksgiving. So you'll need to do some reading, but then the last quiz and all that isn't due until December the 6th. So that's the last night before finals week. So hopefully that works for all of you and your schedules. Here are the rubrics for the 2 papers. You can just kind of take a look at how I'm going to grade those. And then just a little bit about the academic honor code policy, what honor code violations are, and what I do if I catch you cheating. And basically, I check with the registrar's office. If it's your first time, I just assign a penalty, which would usually be failing the assignment. If it happens more than once, then it goes into a more formal process where there's a committee that meets with you. And so my bottom line is don't cheat, don't plagiarize, make sure you're citing your sources. These are the worst conversations I have with students when I have to confront them about plagiarism. I really don't want to have to do that. And 9 times out of 10, what I've found is the student's gotten behind, they've downloaded something from the internet, the Turnitin software picks it up, and it's all avoidable. I'll tell you, I'm very generous, I'm very lenient with extensions for work. If you get behind, I'm glad to give you an extension. I'd rather have you have a few days to do your best work than cut or paste something from the internet. So don't feel like you need to do that. Come see me, send me an email. We'll figure something else out. We'll extend the time period. I have no problem doing that. And I'd much rather have that conversation than, hey, I caught this thing and now we've got to deal with the consequences of it. Okay, I think that's all I have for right now. Please make sure you watch those online lectures and do the online discussion. I will look forward to meeting you all in person next Monday. In the meantime, please feel free to call or email if you have any questions. I'd be glad to talk more with you about anything that you're not sure about or anything you have concerns about. Okay, everybody, looking forward to seeing you next week. Have a great week. Bye now.